And the Fallout 76 news keeps rolling in. This time I have some really cool news about PVE content. Yes, PVE content and PVE only content, as well as brand new details about camps, PvP multiplayer, the map, how questing works, and so much more straight from Bethesda, from Todd Howard, Pete Hines, and many of the lead developers on Fallout 76. So guys, get excited and welcome back, my fellow Wasteland Wanderers and Vault Dwellers. We're going back to the Wasteland to talk about more Fallout 76, and the best news out of the recent Game Informer article is this line right here from Bethesda's Gardener, who says this: when you are doing group events, we turn off the PvP. If all these random people are fighting a giant monster, you don't want to get hit by a stray bullet and then be in PvP. We want to make it an intentional thing. End quote. So that is really cool. It almost makes certain events in the game like PVE only events, which I'm actually really thrilled by. Now, of course, when the dust settles and you kill the monster, it sounds like potentially there could be people around you that can engage in PvP, but I'm going to get into more details about exactly how PvP is going to be working in this game, because it's further explained in fleshed out details, which I'm excited for, so let's do this. Okay, so we'll start from the very beginning. This is a breakdown from that Game Informer article. Check it out in the description below if you just want to read it for yourself. It's a very extensive article, but we're going over the important bits. So, yeah, I mentioned to you guys in that little quote there about group events. Yeah, so yeah, there's multiplayer events and world events in Fallout 76. It says this: they're brand new to the Fallout experience. Todd Howard says, when you get near one, it starts broadcasting for help. It's like a timed multiplayer quest. So these events will be appearing at random times and places, whereas others appear in very specific spots and at specific times on the map. Now, some of these events will require the help of your teammates. Like, it sounds like it's going to be an absolute requirement to have someone help you with them. And then some of these group events will require large amounts of players to trigger them on the server. So they're kind of like gathering places for you to meet in these PVE events, and it kind of shuts down PvP. And I think it's also an opportunity for players to meet up, engage in a monster or what have you, and then also meet new friends. I think that's a great way to meet new friends in the world of Fallout 76, so that's really cool. Now, if you see one triggered on your map, you can fast travel to it, it sounds like. And events will also offer players, get this, the best loot in the game. So this is one of the ways you're going to be obtaining the very best loot in the game. Now, they did give indication in the article that you can actually craft some of these loot items, but some of these players might not have the crafted components to do that. So what other way can you go get this rare loot? Go after these group events. Now, Gardner, who is a developer on Fallout 76, did detail one of these smaller events that we can engage in. He says, you'll get a call about robots in distress, and you basically have to go and escort them, to various locations. If they live in the end, you get a reward. That's a random event that will spawn. Some people will join you or not. The robots have a lot of character, by the way, and they are sort of the levity of the mission. You'll follow along, and they'll make little comments to you, end quote. That sounds like fun. That sounds pretty cool. And it's also nice to note that, of course, you'll likely be playing with friends, or maybe you'll bump into a stranger during these group events. It's very likely you would, because people would be very interested in this event and converge on it. Now, let's talk about the very beginning of the game, emerging from the vault. Then we'll get into more about quests and perk cards and zones on the map and stuff like that. A lot of stuff to get to, so hold on to your butts. So, it says this: when you emerge from the vault, you will receive some sort of transmission from the Overseer. Now, Todd Howard says this: she left before everybody. She left secret instructions for you, and that's kind of the jumping on point for what we call the main quest. At the end of it, you launch the nukes. The nukes are a game system, but they are also part of the main story. End quote. So the Overseer's quest is basically not an easy task. So this main quest line is not going to be easy, and you'll have to reach a high level to get to its conclusion. So you might come to a point in the game where you can't go on to the story. You're not the proper level, so you'll have to expand your horizon, so to speak, and move on to optional quests. Basically farming XP and getting that level up so that you can go and push through the main quest line. That sounds like the gist of how this main quest line is going to work. And Todd Howard did say this: given the nature of the game, you can jump ahead in parts and go back to others. End quote. Now, there was some further explanation about these quests. He goes on to say, you'll wander near something and will be alerted of a quest like explore this mine. In the past, we thought this was a little bit gamey, but we want you to find it. We're being very proactive with where this content is. You'll have a lot to do very quickly. End quote. So that's cool. And it seems like the leveling and stuff like that also expands into the regions and zones in the map, as Todd Howard explains right now. He says, it's more of a zoned game and more level jumped than our previous stuff. Now he goes on to say, some of the feedback we've gotten is, I'm just going to run across the map. I died. It got hard. There's a reason for that. We have higher level zones. Now, Game Informer goes on to explain, that's not to say that the game won't factor in your level, and if you do happen upon a zone and enter it, enemies may be spawning between level 40 and 60, for example, dependent on your level. So basically these zones will be scaling based on your level, and there will be a range here for these enemies. But if you do enter that zone apparently at a lower level, you are risking it. You may be in the fight for your life. So it sounds like some of the map areas are dedicated to later in the game. And remember the, what was it called? Strawberry Bog or something like that? Cranberry Bog. That's what it was called. Is going to be one of the most difficult areas in the game, apparently. Now, if you are in a group, the first player in that group is going to be setting the level ranges. And that's really important to consider. And the game is going to be divided into 6 regions. But the article didn't say what the leveling was per region. But again, Cranberry Bogs is apparently really, really hard. I'm just going to make a mad dash rush for it right at the beginning, since they said that. I have to see what in the world is in this Cranberry Bog. So I'm going for it. See you guys later. Alright, so what about perk cards, and why did they go with perk cards? Now, apparently they're designed for DLC. It makes DLC and implementing new abilities and stuff like that a lot easier. Todd Howard explains this and his reasoning. He says, there are hundreds of cards. They are all rank up, and there are gold versions of each. Fallout 4 and Skyrim skill systems were really great, but when we got into the DLC, we said, let's add skills or perks. We looked at them and said, where the rules are so strict, the cards allow us to be very flexible moving forward. We can release new perks with events we are doing and also have themed perks, end quote. And I imagine those themed perks could be around holidays and stuff like that. Whatever's happening in the real world, it'd be cool to see something mirror that in the game, perhaps. As long as it doesn't, well, take you out of the post-apocalyptic stuff, of course. Now, they did say there is no real cap in the game, although after level 50, you don't earn skill points, but only perk cards. And again, if you did not know, there is a cap of 4 players to a squad or team that you have personally set up. And the team leader can queue up missions to undertake. So you can go from mission to mission. The team leader can be in charge and say, this is what we're doing today. Let's have fun. Now, as for the total server count, which will be supplying you with people to bump into, random players and stuff like that, the server player count is going to be 25 4 players in a world that's basically 4 times larger than Fallout 4. That doesn't sound like a lot. Todd Howard also mentioned that you may not bump into people too often, but that's where those group events do come into play. The good news again is that you can initiate that fast travel, which is going to be super important, and travel around as a team in that manner if you want to. But don't fast travel. Just kidding. You may have to. Now he goes on to say it's definitely not an MMO with hundreds of players running around a server, and this comes from Development Director Chris Mayer. He says, we have 24 players on one server on a map. That's 4 times the size of Fallout 4. There will be times you see other players, but we hope it's not something that's commonplace. End quote. Interesting. So that is very interesting. They're hoping that it's not actually commonplace and is more of like a rare event. Just like it would be in the apocalypse, perhaps. So let's talk a little bit about PvP engagements and playing in PvP. So this is how the first shot is described in an engagement. This is what Todd Howard has to say. It's like slapping someone in the bar. You won't do much damage to another player until they fire back at you. Now, when a bullet exchange is made, the duel is officially underway, and your next shot will do full damage. Now, caps are rewarded to the victor based on level, but if you die, you can go out and seek revenge on the player that killed you. You'll get double the reward in caps back. And again, you only lose junk in these engagements, although for some players, junk will be extremely important. It's going to be used for settlement building. But Robbie, I don't want to PvP. Well, the good news is we do have those group events, but Howard did explain some of the things and mechanics behind PvP. He says, we like to turn that into a dramatic moment. The player that kills somebody that didn't want to engage in it becomes a wanted murderer. They get no reward, no caps, no XP, nothing for becoming a wanted murderer except for the social incentive people have online to be a-holes. What do we want to do with that? We turn a-holes into interesting content. They appear on your map as a red star. Everybody sees them and they have a bounty on their head. That bounty comes out of their own caps. End quote. That is harsh. You got to be careful with engaging in PvP. So yeah, it's risky with engaging in PvP. Now, you can have multiple character accounts with this game. So I might just have a PvP account and one that's more PvE centric. Now, if you do, again, dying PvP, you do lose your junk. But what about dying against the AI? Do you still lose your junk? Yeah, your junk does drop. Just saying that makes me want to laugh. Your junk does drop, but you can return to where your body was to recover your stuff, just like in Dark Souls. So if you accidentally shoot someone also, you can wave a white flag to disengage. And I think I recovered pretty good on that one. Now, what about Pete Hines on playing in single player or having a solo experience? Because this is online only. He says, I know it was a concern in our community, and it was a concern for me because I play solo a lot in games. Given my schedule, it's hard to find times to a group. Let me scroll down here. He says, find times to group up with folks. Excuse me. With my current character, my plan was I'm walking out of the vault and I'm going left. I haven't been over there before and I don't know what's there. Let's see what happens. I came across some super mutants and got in a big fight with them, completed a few quests, and found this one location outside of a pharmaceutical plant that seemed like an awesome place for a camp. It had a good view from on top of a mountain. I figured not a lot of people could see me from up there. I've been using that base camp to go off and do quests. End quote. So you can see how some of these even bases kind of cater towards that solo play. Now, for camps themselves and settlements, you'll want to develop your camp near resource deposits to gain maximum benefits. And it sounds like there could also be unique benefits as well to your camp if you do that too. Now, there's going to be something called harvesters as well, and you can even connect settlements with everyone in your party to make a larger space, although each player needs to be online to have their part of the settlement appear in the world. So Mayer explained this. He said, we had one test where a dozen people built their camps next to each other and created an enormous city. Now, what about your camp taking damage if you log off? Could that happen? That's not the case. So if you log off with your character, your camp basically logs off with you until you log back on. But once you're online, your camp can be at risk. But thankfully for those blueprints, you can save your camp and just quickly rebuild it. If you're nuked or if your camp gets half destroyed, quickly rebuilding is an option. Now back to those harvesters. Harvesters are going to be like machinery that can mine certain materials in caves and stuff like that near your camp or wherever you find materials to mine. You can build some harvesters. The closer you are to those harvesters, the closer to your settlement and your camp, the maximum bonuses you're going to get from those harvesters, it sounds like. So yeah, guys, there it is. The latest happenings around Fallout 76. A lot of good details here. Again, the most exciting detail out of this article for me personally is the world events and the group events and how they kind of activate PVE only. I love that. I think that's badass. Good choice by Bethesda. I was curious to see how this all worked. So I personally think that's an awesome choice. But guys, stay tuned here for more Fallout 76 and open world gaming goodness. And I will see you guys soon enough in the Wasteland.